Hello students, I am Varsha. I welcome you back to this another session of our online class. Today we will resume the previous chapter, Walls Tell Stories. We had already learnt so many interesting facts about the Golconda Fort and how it helped the soldiers and the king to avoid the enemies, and I do believe that we are going to learn more interesting facts about this fort. So gear up yourselves and get ready to learn more about the chapter Walls Tell Stories. Now let us move to our next part. Why these attacks? So now the students were discussing whatever they have seen and observed in the fort. While we were all talking, Sridhar called us to see a big gun that is known as a cannon. We ran up the steps. Shailaja says, this must have been the Sultan's big gun. Didi says, this was used by Aurangzeb. His full army came with their guns and cannons to attack, but they could not even enter the fort. For 8 months they camped outside the fort. So Sridhar suddenly locates a very big gun, which is usually known as a cannon, and all of the students went up to the steps to see that. And Shailaja told that this would have been the very big gun of the Sultan and the Sultan might be using it. But Didi clarifies that that was used by Aurangzeb, and whenever his full army came with their guns and cannons to attack, they could not even enter the fort. How it could be possible? And for 8 months all the army of Aurangzeb were camping outside the fort. Now Shailaja asked, why would the army come here all the way from Delhi? Now Didi explains. In those days, emperors and kings played such tricks. They tried to make smaller kingdoms a part of their own kingdom. This was done sometimes by friendship, sometimes by flattery, or even by marriage between families. And when nothing else worked, they also attacked them. So this was the story behind the attacks. Now students, Shailaja was very confused to know that why somebody would come from all the way Delhi to Hyderabad. Now Didi explained that very clearly, that that was a kind of strategy to annex, to add other kingdoms to their kingdoms. So wherever there were small kingdoms, so the rulers were very clever and very smart. They wanted to add all those smaller kingdoms into their kingdom, so that their kingdoms will become greater and greater. And for that they played many tricks. So some of the kings, they tried to befriend those kings of smaller kingdoms. Some of them, they also tried to flatter, praise falsely without any reason. And some of the kings also tried to build up the relationship well by marriages. And when these techniques would not work, they would go for wars. So that was a way to enhance their kingdom. So Kalyani could not understand. She asks, why is it that Aurangzeb's army could not get into the fort? He had such a strong army, then what stopped him to get inside the fort? He had so many soldiers and big guns. When you have enough strength with you, what stopped him into the fort? Now Shailaja says, didn't you see these strong thick walls? In the map there is a long deep ditch, that's a pit, along the wall. How could the army enter? Shailaja was very correct. She had already observed that there were so strong and thick walls, so that would be a reason to restrict the enemies from entering into the fort. And there was also a long deep ditch, student, that is known as the pit. The soldiers could hide inside that and could keep an eye on the enemies. So Sridhar says, if the army tried to come from a different side, then the soldiers in the bastions would have seen it from a distance. No wonder it was difficult to attack the fort. So the security system of the Golconda fort was very perfect, and it ensured that no enemies could enter into the fort so easily. So Sridhar confirms it by telling that there were these bastions from where the soldiers could have noticed the enemies and how it would have been possible to allow them to enter inside the fort. So that was the reason why it was so difficult to attack this fort. Now Kalyani says, imagine the army is coming on horses and elephants with all their guns. Here the Sultan's army stands fully prepared. Shailaja says, oh no, how many people and soldiers on both the sides must have been killed in all this fighting? Why do people attack and have wars? Now Kalyani just tries to visualize the situation in her own mind, that when there is a war, there would be so many soldiers who would be coming on horses and elephants in ancient times. If you would have seen this serials on Doordarshan, students, recently it was telecasted, let it be Ramayana or Mahabharat, you would have seen the wars. The soldiers would fight on elephants, on horses. That was a huge war. It continued for so many days and they are trying to visualize the situation, and Shailaja gets very sad because she knows whenever there is a war, so many people would have lost their lives in this fighting, and she tries to find out the answer that why do we need to have a war? We should all be friendly with each other. If we all are in a family, like already it is said, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakum, that means this earth is a family and we all are the family members of a single family, that is this Vasudha, the earth. So if all of us will treat this as one family, then these wars are not going to happen. But we human beings are so selfish and mean that we keep on fighting for silly and petty issues. Because of these boundaries and borders, we have so many wars and fights, and the result is losing the lives of many people. Children get orphaned, women become widows, and that is what is the ultimate result of the wars. So if we all love each other, we keep peace with each other and are happy with each other, there would be no need of wars. So Sridhar says, guns and cannons are things of the past now. These days, many countries have nuclear bombs. A single bomb can cause so much destruction. Yes, definitely, Sridhar focuses on the modern days weapons. So in ancient times, those were the times when there were no modern weapons, there were the usage of guns and cannons, the big guns. So nowadays the science is developed so much, we have nuclear bombs. So, and that could lead to a huge destruction which didn't happen at that time. So there are some points of discussion, students. Now it says that if you have recently read or heard about any country attacking or going to war with another country, so it is all up to you. You have to find out through the latest news and current affairs that which country had attacked, why and for what reason. And then you also have to find out the reason. You could also find out, you'd have to explore more about the weapons. Now the technology has advanced a lot and we do not use the ancient times weapons. So there are a lot of other kinds of weapons which are used in wars nowadays. So you have to find out all about that and what kind of destruction was caused because of this. You know, wars are not good for anybody. There's a lot of destruction and you have to find out what was the destruction. Okay. Now there are some other things also which Sridhar finds out. Sridhar finds out that gun, this big gun, was made up of bronze. Now have you seen anything made of bronze? So you will definitely find out so many things around yourself which are made up of bronze. Try to, nowadays you could see your mother using bronze jewelry also, isn't it? So here is something which we get to know, that tribal people have been using bronze to make many things since thousands of years. One wonders how they took out copper and in tin from the deep mines, melted these metals and turned them into beautiful things. We should know that the mixture of copper and tin becomes bronze. So Yes, now we are all very advanced and we have got all the ways out to make this bronze from the mines and the industries. But before this, when these factories were not there, industries were not there, how those tribal people would have made bronze from the copper and the tin is very interesting. So how they would have melted these metals and turned them into beautiful things. So we should know. Yes students, it is very important to have a discussion with your elders also. So whenever you get time, kindly talk and discuss these things with your elders in the family. Try to find out that in their time what were the things made up of bronze, and are they being still used in your house, and try to trace it out, try to find out from which color you could know that this is utensil of copper or this is made from brass and which one is made from bronze. I do feel that this would be a very interesting activity for you, because you would get to know more about the metals like copper, bronze and brass. Okay. Now there is something very interesting to know. This paragraph is about when there was no telephone. We all know communication is a very important part in our lives. Nowadays we have mobiles, we have wireless technology, we have telephones to communicate with each other. But what about the times when there was no telephone? So here is some interesting fact to know. How was the communication made when there was no telephone? Now Didi asked us to wait at the king's palace. She herself went to Fateh Darwaza. A while later we heard Didi's voice. Alert, I am Sultan Abdul Hassan. I am very fond of music and kuchipudi dance. We all laughed. We were surprised how Didi's voice could be heard from so far. She later told us that if you stand at Fateh Darwaza, whatever you speak can be heard at the king's palace. So students, this was the technique they had devised at that time. They had got this darwaza. So through that, whenever you speak anything from Fateh Darwaza, the voice would come to that place, the other place, and it could be heard from that distance also. So that was the science behind that, through which now we had come to discover, we had invent all these new things, telephones, mobiles and all. Now let us move to the next part of this interesting chapter and find out what other interesting facts are there hidden in the story. Arrangements for water. So we should know what were the arrangements made for water. We already know that this was such a huge fort, so and many people were living inside it. So they all need water to survive. How would they get water? Where was the water stored? So this is all what we should know. Now the picture shown here, you could see the picture where there is a drum and there is a pole and there is a toothed wheel. So mostly this kind of thing we have seen in our farmland. So when a farmer is there for a part of irrigation, they use this kind of technique. So you could see that this is a very old painting of those times. Now can you think why bullocks have been used here? So use your hand movement to show in which direction the drum attached to the rod moves when the bullocks move. So in which direction would the toothed wheel move? Can you have any idea? So you have to use your hand movement to find out in which direction the drum attached to the rod moves. But before that you have to find out why the bullocks were there. So the bullocks were attached so that the water could be drawn. You could see when the bullocks will move, so automatically the drum will also move, and the toothed wheel will move in clockwise direction, whereas the drum will move in the anti-clockwise direction. Okay, so that will be the way to get the water. You can see this picture, students, where there is a pole which is shown under the ground, which joins with another wheel which has a number of pots in it. Okay, so now imagine how would this garland of pots lift water from the well. So here you see the garland of pots is connected with the toothed wheel. Okay, you can see there is a toothed wheel there also, and the garland of pots also moves because of that toothed wheel. Once the pot is in water, it gets filled with water and the pot moves upward, carrying water along with it. Once the pot reaches the level of the canal, water is emptied in the canal. So this way the water was lifted from the well. Do you now get some idea about how the tanks could have been filled by lifting water from the wells? There were some tanks also where the water was to be filled. So the same way bullocks could have been used to move the garland of pots so that the water could have been lifted through the tanks. Now tell me, where else have you seen such kind of wheels attached to other, maybe for example in the gear of a cycle or somewhere else? Yes, this kind of arrangement is found in mechanical watches and sewing machines and heavy machines and in toy cars also. Okay, so this is something for you to find out, that you have to look around and find out how water is pumped up from the ground to higher places. Technology has helped us a lot to achieve. So you will find this electric water pumps are there everywhere, which lifts up the water to a higher place in just a few seconds. In all our houses there are these electric pumps and the tanks are up on our roofs with the help of this electric pumps. Still there are villages where the same old way of the bullocks to lift the water for this purpose. A question which we should ponder over: how is water lifted without electricity? Now the electric motor runs the water pump which suck water from under the ground. So with the help of this motor pump, so the water gets absorbed and it is sucked from the ground or from the tank. But whenever there is no electricity, there are hand pumps or pulleys which are used for lifting water. Okay, so that is the way to lift water. Now there is something which we all should be aware of, and we as the responsible citizens of our country should be very conscious of. Now see, it starts with what a sad sight. Talking, whistling and listening to our own echo, we were walking through this mehrab. Mehrab is an arch. So Sridhar says, oh, the breeze feels so cool in this tunnel. Shailaja, it was written that soldiers stayed here. Now Sridhar says, see this board, but look what the wall is like. Shailaja says, oh, think how this wall has seen thousands of years go by. It has seen kings and queens, horses and elephants, war and peace, but we have spoilt it in just a few years. Kalyani says, I don't understand what kind of fun do people get in writing their names all over the place like this. So they were all enjoying exploring the fort, and they were walking through that mehrab, which is an arch, and Sridhar finds the breeze which was blowing was very cool in the tunnel, and Shailaja finds the board where it was written that the soldiers stayed there. Now Sridhar says, look at this board, but look, how does the wall look? Shailaja is really very much upset by looking at the wall, because the wall is such an evidence of all the ancient stories which has all happened those years ago. It has seen all the kings, the queens, the horses, elephants, war and peace. The walls are a witness to all these auspicious events, all these memorable special events all throughout these years. But we the people have been so careless that we just don't care about this cultural heritage, and we have spoilt it without any reason, just for making fun, just within some seconds. So this heritage, which has been a witness to so many great stories, had been destroyed by us. And Kalyani really feels so upset about it, that what kind of fun do people get when they write their names all over the places like this. So students, you should be very careful whenever you visit these places like our cultural heritage sites, like let it be the Ajanta Ellora caves or the Khandagiri or any such Taj Mahal, Birla temple. There are so many ancient heritage sites which we keep on visiting, and we just for the sake of fun destroy those walls by writing anything here and there. So please take care of these things. This is our cultural heritage. It's a proud thing to display to all of the world people. It is not to be destroyed. We should understand it. We should be proud of this culture and heritage which we possess. But we ourselves are destroying it. Should we do it? Now it's a question we should ask to ourselves. So we should think about it, and we should be very careful and refrain ourselves from doing this and spoiling our cultural heritage. Now this is a very important activity which says that we should close our eyes and go back in time. So this is something for you to imagine, students, because you would have seen so many movies and you would have read so many stories about the kings, about the queens. So now you have to close your eyes and you have to imagine yourself to be in that time. So you have to think about these questions. Here are the questions for you which you should think and which you should visualize. What is the Sultan doing in the palace? What kind of clothes is he wearing? What dishes are being offered to him? But why does he seem so worried, and in what language is he talking? So you have to imagine yourself in the fort of Golconda, and you have to think about this question. You have to imagine the rooms of the palace, the beautiful carpets and curtains. Be a character of the story which is being played in the Golconda fort. Okay, so you have to imagine yourself as you are the king or the queen or a soldier or a person in the Golconda fort, and then only these pictures will flash in your mind. So what are the different factories you see, how many people are working there? It's just about imagination. Now the children, they move to another place. Now let us see what happens next. Going to the museum. After seeing Golconda, the children also went to a museum in Hyderabad. Students, we should know that museum is a place where many ancient things are preserved and kept to display to the general public. Many things were found when the place around Golconda was dug, like pots, jewelry, swords, etc. So Shailaja says, oh, why are these broken pieces of pots kept in the almirah? See that small plate made of bronze. That blue piece seems to be made of ceramic, that is clay. Didi explains, it is through all these things that we come to know how people of those times lived, what they used and what things they made. If all these would not have been kept here, how would you know so much about those times? So children got to see a lot of things. There were pots and jewelries and swords, etc. And Shailaja could not understand that why the broken pieces of pots were kept in the almirah. Some were made of a bronze and some were made of ceramic clay. Now Didi explains it to her that these are the evidences, these are the glimpses of our ancient history. Through these things only we could know how the people survived at those ancient times, how were they leading their lives, what things were they using at those times. So through these things only we get a glimpse of our rich ancient history. So that is why museums are there. We have a lot of museums all throughout our country. One of that is in Hyderabad, one is there in the Kolkata, one is there in Delhi. So in Bhubaneswar also we have a museum which tells us about our rich cultural heritage, and we all should get to see these museums and find out about our rich history. Okay, now there is something for you to do. You can make your own museum. See, Rajni teaches in a government school in Malappuram district in Kerala. Together with the children of her class, she has collected many old things from all the houses, like old walking sticks, locks, umbrellas, wooden slippers, you can say khadao, pots, etc. They also saw what these things look like today. Rajni and the children put up an exhibition which people from the neighborhood came to see. You could also do this. So this is something for you to explore. Students, there are many things in our own houses also which belong to the ancient times, to the old era. There would be some utensils which our grandmothers or their mothers would have been using all throughout the time. So we can collect those old items and could display them, and this would be a great experience, that would be a great adventure for all of us. People will come, people will get to see, and the next generation, those who are younger to us, will get some idea. Even we will get to learn and know more about our culture and traditions. Okay. Now there is a painting for you to look and observe. This is a very beautiful painting, and there is a very beautiful story also hidden in it. So this painting is basically 500 years old, and it shows Agra fort being constructed. We all know about the fort of Agra. So this is the story of Agra fort when it was being constructed. So you have to see this picture, observe it carefully, and you have to find out what kinds of work are people doing, how many men and women are working, how are they taking the huge pillar up along the slope. Is it easier to lift a heavy thing straight up or along a slope? This all are the questions which you have to answer. And were you able to see the man carrying water in a mashak? Mashak is a leather bag. So there are so many things hidden in this chapter, and which you would see carefully and which you would find out very interesting. After reading the chapter, you have a writing assignment for you. So students, you explore your surroundings and then you can write what kinds of pots have you seen around you, and try to talk to your grandparents and other people around your surroundings and try to find out like what other kinds of pots and pans were being used in their times, the people, those who belong to the previous generation. And if you have ever been to any museum or heard about it, then you can share your experience through writing about it. Okay. So you can also make a survey, you have to go out, you have to explore and find out if there is any old building or any monument which is near your house where people come. If you are staying in a tourist place like Hyderabad or Delhi, you would have something near your house where people would be going to visit. So you can share those experiences and you have to find out, okay, that how old was it, how did you know, and what was it made of, what color was it. All these things you can find out and write down, and were there any special kind of designs, and you can draw those designs. Those who are very much interested in art and craft, they can draw those beautiful designs, and who used to live there in the olden days, what kind of activities took place, and do some people still live there. So all these things you can find out and could explore more. Now as we have come to the end of our chapter, there are some very important questions to explore. Okay. So the question which we have is what we have learnt so far. We have learnt about our ancient cultural heritage, Golconda Fort. We have learnt about the designing of the architectural structure like bastions and burj, and which help from protecting the fort. We have learnt about the arrangement of water. We have learnt about a very important thing, that we should not spoil our cultural heritage sites. We should not write and scribble anywhere on the walls of these special monuments and buildings, and we are proud of our culture and heritage. This is what we have learnt so far. Let us see a question which is there for you. Sangeeta thinks it is useless to keep old things in a museum. How would you convince her that it is important to have a museum? So, you can explain it to her by saying that various antique things are kept in the museum, and they tell us a lot about ancient times. We come to know about people and culture by looking at the things kept in the museum. Hence, museum is very helpful for us. We get to know about our rich history. So, it is very important to know about our history. Then only we could proceed for a better future. Now, another important question is that why do you think the chapter is named Walls Tell Stories? Do you have any idea? Yes, absolutely children, because this chapter is about historical structures which had been witnesses to their times. They tell a lot about the people, art, culture, craft, technology and events of the historical period. So that's why the name Walls Tell Stories is perfect and appropriate for this chapter. So this is all about our chapter Walls Tell Stories. I do believe that we have got a clear idea of the rich cultural traditional heritage of our country India, and we should preserve it, and we should be very proud of our country and its tradition, culture and heritage. So that's all. So hope you have enjoyed the chapter and learned very well and understood the deep message behind this chapter. Thank you. Keep smiling and keep exploring and keep waiting for the next online class. Thank you.